Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Would you agree that prevention is better than cure? Slip, slop, slap. That may help prevent you getting skin cancer. You've all heard of that terminology before, and I think most of us will agree to it. I have a general rule, and my general rule is most people in life are good people. And you probably have that same rule or moral compass in your own life. I have 3 scenarios for you tonight, and they all revolve around a building. See the circle in the middle? The circle in the middle of the building. People live around that person in that building. So just imagine that. You've got the high-rise building there and you've got someone in the middle. Imagine coming home in the afternoon and someone's got a beer bottle and they go, bang, they throw it down on you. And they get another beer bottle and they throw it down on you. But you live in that complex. How would you feel about that? What do you think should be done to the person in the building doing that? Another problem, different building. 2 o'clock in the morning. Hey, what's going on? Hey, what's going on? Talk to me! Please talk to me, come on! It doesn't have to be 2 o'clock in the morning. It can be 9 o'clock in the morning. It can be at midday. It doesn't matter. The other scenario is, well, they are the scenarios. You can have many other scenarios in your life. The third scenario is you've probably experienced them all at home already, where you live. It could be a neighbour doing anything. There are many different scenarios. There aren't only 3 scenarios which could occur in your unit complex or in your house where you live next door to your neighbour. So, you being the unit owner who lives there, next door, side by side, you're a tenant or a unit owner. What would you do in that case? That person was doing that. What would you do about that? Number 1, you may go and try to speak to the person. Hey Bill, mind keeping the noise down over night time? You're just making a bit too much noise. Some people will go and speak to people and try to discuss, hey, what's the issues, what's the problem? But in today's society, most people don't communicate with people. Number 2, let's blame the building manager. It's all his fault because some unit person in the complex is causing all this noise. It should be his issue to go and resolve. Or where I step in, the property manager. It's the property manager's fault because I've put that tenant in the property, or my tenants live around that person in that property. How about, why don't we just call the police? We'll just call the police and the police can come out and have a few words to the person. Very good solution. That's what most people would do, and that's what I'd recommend all people do. Some people may even want to call the local civic council. Some people want to talk to the body corporate. What do you do in a situation where you've got someone like that? I've got experience in this because I'm a property manager and I manage people's property and I look after an owner's investment. Now an owner, what they simply want for a property is a fair rent for the property. Would that be fair? You want to rent out your investment property. That's fair, isn't it? You'd like to have a sound tenant, but wouldn't it be great to have a great tenant or a good tenant? So most owners want a sound rent with a sound tenant or a good tenant. And the other thing most owners want is a low maintenance tenant. Someone who's not going to complain all the time. But they want to have their property occupied as well. The agent's role is more or less to facilitate all those things happening. I'm employed by the owner to give them advice on different parts of a tenancy, which you could all understand if you've ever rented a property or owned a property. There's some skills there which you don't want to be involved in. You want to give it to an agent to look after that for you. But if you're a tenant living in a property, You want to live in a property, you want to pay your rent. That's fair. You're paying rent to live in the property. You expect the property to be in good repair. You expect maintenance to be done promptly. But one other thing you'd like to have is quiet enjoyment. As a tenant or an occupant of a property, you'd like to have a quiet enjoyment. Now let's just go back to the beginning of my speech. Prevention is better than cure. Lock that in. I've called the police. Police turn up. They investigate it. Sorry, we can't help you anymore. Our hands are tied. What do you mean? The person's making threats. He's screaming every single night. He's throwing beer bottles down on people. He's slamming doors. How can that be acceptable? These are 3 separate instances I've had over the last few years. The police can do absolutely nothing. I've had people living around a person like that vacate left, right and centre because a person is acting that way. Because the other people around the property are entitled to one thing, as per their lease: quiet enjoyment. And I'm not getting quiet enjoyment if someone's carrying on like that. So why can't I do anything about it? Why? Why can't you do anything about it? It all comes down to one thing, people. The Mental Health Act. The Mental Health Act overrides the Residential Tenancies Act. So the good news for you is, if you happen to be living in a property and you got someone throwing beer bottles down on someone, screaming and yelling and carrying on, I can try my best to try to have that person vacate the property. I can take him to court to get a warrant of possession, which I've done numerous occasions on these type of instances. I get my warrant of possession. It takes about 30 days to get. And guess what happens? Possession day is 1 day away. I then get a letter from the courts saying, sorry to inform you, the Mental Health Act overrides the warrant of possession. The person is staying in the property. That's not fair. That is not fair in my opinion. I'm looking after my investors, my landlords. I've also got to try to look after the other residents in the building or the neighbours of property. So ladies and gentlemen, we have an act called the Anti-Discrimination Act, and it says we can't discriminate against sexuality, gender identification, sex, relationships, mental health, religious beliefs. Now just a quick example of what the Anti-Discrimination Act says. So my question for you tonight is, if I'm the real estate agent looking to put a tenant into a property and I know that person has a mental health issue, do I put them into the property? If I know from past experience there's a high probability of that tenant causing an issue. But once again, if you were the property owner of the property, you have employed your agent to have a duty of care for you, and you would advise that person with mental health issues is a liability to have them in an investment property. Be careful if you answer that question, because you could be discriminating, and I can't discriminate in my job. As the skincare advertisement says, slip, slop, slap. Prevention is the cure. Are you better off not putting a person into a rental property if they have mental health issues? Prevention is better than cure. I'll leave that with you. Thank you, fellow Toastmasters.
Madam Toastmaster, Nick is a very experienced speaker. Tonight, he utilized a whole gamut of techniques, speech techniques, to keep our attention. So tonight, I will analyze some of the techniques he used. He came up, first of all, his opening. What did he say? He said, do you believe that prevention is better than cure? He opened with a question. What do we do? Yeah, I believe it too, don't I? Yes, you answered the question, didn't you? And that captured your attention. That was the first technique he used. And then in his introduction, he told us, I'll present you 3 scenarios. No ifs, no buts, very clear. He will present the 3 scenarios. We knew exactly what he was going to do. Then he showed us a photograph. I like that visual aid. Why? Because he showed us a photograph of the apartment, and in it he circled the middle bit. That helped him with the story afterwards. We all can imagine living in an apartment surrounded by everybody else, right? So any poor or bad tenant, next bad neighbor, when you have so many neighbors, the possibility of getting a bad neighbor. That painted that environment for us when he explained the 3 scenarios. That was very well done. And then, next technique he used, he just slipped in a little sentence. He said, I'm a property manager, he told us. Why did he say that for? He told us that to establish his authority. I am a property manager, so I know what I'm talking about, right? So he established his authority on this subject. What other technique he used? He used the shot technique. He slammed the legs and he rattled the wall. He shouted it, right? Shock us. I felt that that's probably a bit overdone. I felt that if he had done 1, maybe at the most 2, that's okay. I think that got carried away. Then from then on, his speech then went off to the problems with evicting a tenant. He talked about the Mental Health Act. He talked about the other act is Anti-Discrimination Act he talked about, and how difficult it is to evict tenants and so on. I felt that there was no hint of that coming. I felt that somewhere and then further up the speech there would be some connection of what he was going to talk about will help us, rather than caught me by surprise introducing that segment that I wasn't expecting. So, but overall, it is effective. He told us the problems of how to evict, the difficulty of evicting a tenant. So, if it's so difficult to evict a tenant, it becomes a very important job to actually not pick somebody that is going to give you a problem. Overall, tonight, he showed us all the speech techniques in the textbook. We as audience just sat there and enjoyed that speech, but he used a whole variety. Congratulations, well done.